Well, welcome to tonight, everyone. Thanks for coming along to our dating and relationships Young Adults Hangout. We're so excited that you guys could make it, and hoping it's a night that blesses you all. That's the heart behind all these nights we're doing for as long as we do it, is to deal with topics that affect you guys and just have open and honest conversations as best we can. Now, 2 weeks' time from tonight, our next one is going to be about money, generosity, and greed. So, and we've got some big names coming to join us. We've got the Master Andrew Long.
Ooh!
Oh, Big Oliver Pierce.
Oh,
joining
you got
us.
the big guns.
Big names. And Simon Walker, backed by popular demand.
Mustache.
Plus or minus.
Great. That was wonderful.
Plus or minus the moustache. We haven't negotiated that final piece of the deal yet, so we'll keep you posted on that. And I have like the most challenging message for you to listen to from a guy called Randy Alcorn. So don't be put off by the name.
Well, Alcorn?
It's definitely a G-rated message. That's one that hopefully you guys will really enjoy listening to. Why don't I pray for us? And then we'll dive right into talking about dating and relationships. So why don't we pray? Dear God, I just want to thank you so much for tonight. Thanks that because of technology, even though we're at home on a Sunday night, we can hang out like this and have an honest conversation about what is for a lot of people a really difficult topic. And that's the thought of dating and relationships. And so, Lord, I just pray for us tonight as we open up your word, as we hear from the Taylors, and as we think about how to honor God and honor Christ in this area of our lives. Lord, would you just give us grace by your Holy Spirit? Would you come and dwell in our hearts and just help us to hear from you, Lord, even where it might be uncomfortable, even where it might not even feel naturally right to us, Lord. We don't want to do what we feel is right. We want to do what's right in your eyes. We want to be faithful to you. We want to honor you, Lord. So be with us. Give us grace. Guard us as a panel from saying stupid stuff. And I just pray that tonight would just be a blessing to everyone who hears. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Was that a prayer for me?
That was a prayer.
You caring to me
for Dave Taylor.
Thank you for your care. It's so meaningful.
So, Dave and Em tonight joining us on our panel. What I thought we'd do is kick off just by getting to know these guys a little bit. So, we want to hear, of course, the story of how they got together. That's really important. But hey, what's one funny thing about you guys that people might not know?
Oh.
You go first.
No, please. Ladies first. That's the way we've always gone in our relationship. What's one funny thing that they might not know about you?
Oh, I don't know about a funny thing. Like, I suppose I think my mind goes to embarrassing stories, and I feel like I have them regularly, but I tend to not remember them. But one I do remember, oh dear, it's Elijah, is we were coming home from Noosa, I think, one time, and we stopped at a petrol station to fill up the car. Josh is already laughing. He knows what I'm going to say.
I love this one.
So it's super embarrassing and hilarious. But we stopped at a petrol station to fill up with diesel. There was this big long line of cars, but there was this pump at the front that no one was using. And Dave's like, hop out and see why people aren't using that pump, because it looked perfectly fine. And so I got out and I walked forward and I had a look at the pump. And I was walking back to the car, but still looking at the pump. And I opened the car door and I put my foot in to say, I don't think there's diesel at that pump. To turn around, this guy say, "This isn't your car, darling." At which point I die, and I turn around to the car behind to see Dave and the kids absolutely killing themselves laughing. It's like,
we're in the car behind and we're just like, kids, don't look now. Your mum is getting in somebody else's car. She's leaving us.
Thankfully, it wasn't a weird, freaky old man that drove off quickly.
It was strange.
Anyway, so I was very embarrassed, got out, and then went back to my car. And then when he got out to fill his car with petrol, he looked at me and goes, "You want to drive?" So anyway,
that is a classic story.
Most embarrassing
That
moment.
was special. I've had numerous embarrassing moments, so it's hard to bring it down to just a small amount for such a thing. But to give you one thing that was just a special memory, a few years ago, I was preaching, and I thought, man, my jeans are quite tight. They feel a little tight this morning. And so I got down for preaching and said to Emma, I feel like these jeans are a bit tight. At which point she had a look and she said, "You're wearing my jeans." I had just preached in my wife's jeans. That was very awkward. So that was quite embarrassing. And I still tell people to this day the time when I preached in my wife's jeans. Not many people can say that.
That's
No.
awesome.
No.
That's probably a good thing.
Well,
Yes.
let's get into the real stuff that people have come here to find out about. How did you guys meet? What's your story?
Yeah, you can. They hear me all the time.
Well, we met through church, actually. Dave was part of the youth group, but he was kind of. But I think we started talking because I think I actually had a cousin that liked you. Wasn't that how it worked?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my cousin quite liked Dave, but was in the stage where she didn't really want to talk to him herself, so she used to send me over with messages. It was back in the good old, teenage days. And we just started getting friends, actually, through that. So we met through church. That's the
Well, and I quite like Emma, but all she kept doing was coming into my house and telling me about her cousin. And I'd be like, oh, that's really nice. It's really nice. And then she would leave. And that was kind of
I already had a boyfriend.
Same church. She already had a boyfriend. That was a bit of a problem. That was a real dilemma. I was 20 and you were nearly 17. 16. 20 and 16.
So youth leader, youth kid?
Kind of.
Yes, that's officially the line, I suppose. Yes.
I don't
These
think that's
days we
allowed
get
anymore.
arrested.
I think the policies
So
can't get that.
We have
allowed
policies
anymore.
to prevent that now, but back in the day, it was okay.
Now, and you were, I believe, remembering the story, the boyfriend ended up coming to you for advice?
Oh, he did. Yeah, this young man, James is his name.
James.
James, he came to me and he said, "Oh, Dave," because I'm his youth leader. He's like, "I don't think it's working out with me and Emma. I just think, what do you think?" And I'm like, "You know what? I do not think it's working out. I think it's time to call this thing off." So he did. And then I made my way in.
It wasn't quite as fast.
No, I waited a good 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks before I moved in. It was, it took time.
I guess for some people, 5 weeks is a long time. So poor old James.
Well, James, he's probably still out there wondering what could have been.
Okay, let's talk a bit more about, you guys met at church and had what would now be considered a scandalous relationship. What stood out to you about the other person when you guys, first met and started dating? What were the things that kind of, attracted you, so to speak?
I'll let Emma begin, and then I will come in with a crescendo.
I think for me, we actually just became friends. I think that was the first thing. And then you made me laugh. He made me laugh a lot. That's about as deep as it went.
Back then, it was the first time she had heard all my jokes. Now, like 28 years on or whatever it is, they're wearing a bit thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that, not me.
Yeah. The thing that I liked about it, I found her attractive. I thought she was pretty. Beyond that, I think the thing that I really fell in love with was she was really compassionate. And I think it was really, it was lovely to hear her talking about her friends, talking about the way she cared for other people. And she wasn't doing it to impress me because she was telling me about her cousin. But getting to know her more. There was one time in particular when we were meeting up, and I'd finished work and I came downstairs and she was crying. She's holding a McDonald's and crying. And I'm like, what in the world? Cold Big Mac? What's the problem, darling? And so I said, "Oh, what's up?" And she was like, "Oh, I went to McDonald's. I saw a homeless man, went to McDonald's to give him this McDonald's. But then when I got back, he had gone and I've been looking around for him. I couldn't find him." And that was when she was 17 years old. And I just found that incredibly attractive, that you think that's such a beautiful quality to love people like that. That's somebody I'd love to be with.
Not sure why I needed to cry about it. Must have been like the wrong time of the month, doesn't it?
Don't, because all these years I just thought it was pure compassion. Now you're telling me it was your time of your month. This is really sad.
That's sweet. That's really sweet. You guys kind of became friends in church, and then as a youth leader, which we won't dwell on that, but
don't need to dwell on that. Yeah,
you just
He was more of a helper.
I was like an assistant. I was like a
really
helper. Yeah.
Okay, call it what you will. No, that's excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
I guess, so how much from get-go of dating to you guys getting married, what was the
About three and a half
3 years.
years.
3.5
It was
years.
a long time.
Okay.
So I think we were at least 2 years going out, and then another year engaged
Okay.
before we got married. It was a long time. So we got married when Emma was 20.
Right. So, which was that pretty young then as well?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. Yes.
Although
That's
Sharon
why
and
on
I-
the photo she looks young, and I look like I'm dying of some type of disease because it was just a long time ago.
You do.
That's
look
back
like-
in the day when people
you
would
look
say,
like-
"Oh, brother, how can we pray for you?" And I'm like, "What is there a problem?"
You look like you have leukemia.
Oh, I'm so
All I need is a
cute.
headscarf, and people would pray for me for weeks.
We shouldn't joke about stuff like that, but anyway. All right, cool. Well, as you think back, so you met, Emma was 17, 3 years later, you guys got married.
Yep.
As you reflect back on that time, is there anything you would do differently?
Yeah. Well, I would pick the same girl.
That's a good thing. Good stuff.
That's good. That's encouraging. Yeah, what would I do differently? I just think back we could have waited long. Yeah, but there's lots of things we would have done differently.
Most things.
Most
We're the
things.
what not to do. They're the what to
Yeah,
do.
these guys learned from I probably wouldn't do that. Maybe
Get
try
away, young
something
It's
different.
true.
Oh my,
Let me
what
pour
would
some
we have
more
done
Prosecco.
differently? I think we didn't need to go out as early as we did. There really wasn't any need.
No.
We could have carried on being friends in group formats and been fine. And I think that would have helped us. 3 years was a very, very long time to go out and put massive pressure on us physically. In particular, it was really hard and to cope with all that, to be quite frank. So I think we would have probably waited to date. Didn't need to do that. I think we gave away our hearts to each other pretty early on, which is fine when it works out. But Emma wasn't my first girlfriend, so I had others that I also thought I was going to get married to.
Right.
And so I certainly look back on my whole dating life, for me personally, with regret, and just think, that was one disaster. Emma was my first girlfriend that didn't dump me, and all the others did.
Oh.
But I think that was partly because of the way I was behaving, the way I was going on. And when I was reading the article earlier on, I thought his story about what he was looking for in relationships was definitely my story, finding identity in it. And so I just seemed to go from one disaster to the next. So I think when we went out, it was much more friendly than I'd had before in a really good way. But I think then it was still too devoted pretty quick.
Mm.
I mean, we were seeing each other. I think after 3 months, we were seeing each other every day. And you're like, by the time we got married, apart from actually living together and obviously being intimate, everything else was exactly the same. We were just carrying on. We were always having meals together and stuff. But I think that put really difficult pressure on us. And if it hadn't have worked out, I think we both would have been destroyed. It would have been a disaster.
It would have been hard to stay in the same church together. If
It
hadn't worked
would have
out.
been very difficult, because we were very devoted pretty quick.
So you dived in pretty quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Because I think about our
All heart, no
story
head.
and sorry.
All heart, no head. That's how it happens.
We kind of did that in some ways as well. I mean, we knew each other a lot better before we started dating, and I was in a different season of life, but in some ways pretty similar. I mean, we weren't mucking around. I mean, we were talking about getting married within how long?
First date, second date.
Something like that.
That's funny.
Yeah. Look, the truth is, I think you can. The problem is when you're just 20 and 16,
Right.
that ain't going to work. So as soon as we knew, I think quite quickly, we knew that we probably wanted to be together. This was going to be a long time to wait. So the amount of pressure that caused was very significant and very difficult to navigate. And I would never recommend it to anybody, really. Would you say?
No, yeah.
That's probably overarchingly what we would have done.
Yeah, and I think
Different.
it
We
would
didn't
have
receive
been
counsel either. We didn't
not
ask
really.
anybody.
No, we didn't really have many. We didn't have any mentors as such, or people who
No.
were particularly helping us walk through. My parents had set out a few rules, which we pretty much stuck to most of the time. But outside of that, we didn't really have anyone speaking into it particularly. I would definitely change that.
Now, I think it would be fair to say when we dated, we didn't have a clue what we were doing at all. And so I think, I would never want to go back to, it's hard. So I think for all you guys watching in, I think this whole season to navigate, I think is one of the hardest you're ever going to navigate. I think it's actually really difficult. And I feel for you. I wouldn't want to go back to it. It's actually very hard. But we didn't even have any setups where there was people like us talking about it. It was just us muddling through, trying to figure out. We were clueless. So we didn't dream about maybe asking somebody else what their perspective was, or we didn't have a clue what we were doing.
No.
And I think that was unhelpful.
I don't know about you, but I wasn't particularly thinking through the biblical categories of what am I even looking for in a husband biblically. Like, I was a Christian, but in terms of a relationship with the Lord, it wasn't massively strong. So I wasn't really thinking about that.
I mean, we were such a disaster. We really enjoyed each other, and we had a great friendship. And we did fall in love, genuinely, but we didn't have a clue. And I think one of the things that got highlighted really quickly is even after we got married. So we get married in April of 2000. We then moved to the United States in August of 2000 and go live with a family.
Whoa.
So after 4 months of marriage, we haven't got a clue what we're doing. And I'm in pastor's college, and they're talking to us as men, as leaders of our homes, and they're saying, so guys, how are you praying for your wife at the moment? What is she reading? And they're all sharing about what each other are reading. I'm like,
hopefully the Bible.
I guess maybe the Bible. I mean, I didn't have a clue what it meant to talk. And in a weird way, although we were really committed to the church and loved the Lord, we actually didn't talk about Jesus with each other much at all. That wasn't really on the radar. We were just sort of busy enjoying one another and enjoying people. It's a miracle how we are a trophy of his grace because we didn't have much of a clue what we did.
Modern day miracle.
A modern day miracle. We are the Santa Claus of sovereign grace.
Santa Claus, no.
Miracle. That's it. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that story. And I know some of these stories are going to keep coming up, as we go.
You can ask us anything. Yeah.
Moving on. I mean, tonight we've asked people to come, having read the Marshall Segal. I don't know. I say it's like Steven Seagal.
Yeah.
Same name.
I've seen some of his movies. I like it. I like the one where he jumps off a train.
It's less kung fu, but I do imagine Marshall as having a ponytail, slicked ponytail at the back. Anyway.
The actual picture on the front is when Emma and I were dating. It's amazing how they got the photo. That was us when we first met.
Wait to date until you can marry. Which I thought was a good provoking article. Yeah. What stood out to you guys as you read it?
Yep. I think what stood out to me is I wish I'd been mature enough to read an article like this when I was thinking about dating, rather than not having a clue. I think the thing that stood out to me in particular was when he's talking about his own experience, and he talks about his own dating. He says, I was looking for affection, safety, and intimacy from girls instead of from God. I could have written that line. That was my whole story. I went from one, and I wasn't dating in terms of I'm going from one quickly to the next, but I would get like super involved with somebody, and then if it doesn't work, okay, I need to find somebody else to get super involved with. And I think I was looking for affection and safety and intimacy from a girl, and that's what I felt sort of security in, and that's how I could sort of function and be okay, which is a disaster and causes massive problems. But that really spoke to me as in, what are even the intentions in dating somebody? What are you going after? And is it to lay your life down to serve them and bless them and see if this is going to work and bring you closer to Christ? Or is it more because there's a hole in my life and I need you to fill it, which never goes well? So that affected me.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. I mean, I look back on my, history of dating, and I just see God's grace of my life because, I got married at 29, but prior to that, I mean, I was hand on heart, I was just pretty desperate, and I think dating for me was more about exactly that, looking to fulfill that kind of loneliness, I guess, looking for a girl, a relationship to somehow satisfy, some sort of thing that was missing from my life.
Yeah.
And that's just a recipe for disaster, because no thing apart from Christ could ever fulfill that, you know, in your life. And so I think that's so important. I really liked a few different things. Talking about, he has this line: the great prize in dating is Christ-centered clarity about marriage or towards marriage. Romantic intimacy is the safest in the context of marriage, and marriage is the safest in context of clarity. And so this idea of the purpose of dating is about finding clarity onto whether or not, you know, this is a person you should be marrying. I think that's not how I approach dating at all. Not until I think a lot later in my life. I think for me in the past, dating for me was more about the excitement of it, the thrill of it, the enjoyment of it, the feeling that closeness with someone else, rather than just clarity, you know, discernment. So I thought that was something good. How about for you, Ems?
I agree with the things you guys have mentioned, and I think just when he starts the beginning in terms of when he says, when should young people begin to date, he said your answer probably depends on why you think you or anyone else should date in the first place. So I thought that was good in terms of so like when I started dating you, I wasn't even thinking about marriage, but if the whole point of dating, courting, whatever you want to call it, is with a view towards marriage,
it's a bit different.
Then I wouldn't have started dating you when I was 17, because I would have known I wasn't going to be getting married anytime soon. So I thought that was helpful. I also liked what he talked about in terms of while you wait, like just in terms of, you know, making yourself, pursuing the Lord, striving to become the future spouse God calls you to be, living to serve, throwing yourself into the church and serving people and just loving Jesus, basically. I just thought that was great. And I've definitely seen and known singles that have remained single later in life to do that, and see what joy and contentment it brings them. So I definitely wish that I had been more focused on that when I was younger. Then
I agree.
Finding what I thought was going to give me true happiness. So I thought that was good.
Awesome. Well, look, I have one last question for you guys before we dive into the breakout rooms. I'm going to talk you guys through how that is going to look. Obviously, you know, restrictions are easing and things, but we're still pretty limited in terms of hanging out. Social events in particular, pretty limited. You know, we're just talking now about restaurants with up to 50 people, but still only small groups allowed. And I guess one question I'm hearing a lot of is about dating during COVID. How do you do that? And specifically, a lot of people have been talking about internet dating. Christian Connection, I believe, had a COVID sale or something like that on ahead on the grapevine.
COVID sale.
Yeah, a discount or something like that. But I guess the point is, internet dating, you know, it's more of a recent thing, I guess, in the last 20 years in particular. Do you guys have any thoughts, any reflections for us on that topic, just in general? Just a preemptive strike on some of the questions I think people are probably thinking about.
Well, I mean, I haven't thought about internet dating that much. Back in the day, when we were actually dating, only really creepy people did internet dating. So I think I've known one or two people in my life that's what they did. Because it seemed, 20 years ago, it seemed like pretty desperate.
Whereas probably in secular society, at least now, Tinder's probably the normal way that people would meet, or at least up there with the most normal ways, you know, in our world. So I guess there's been a bit of something of a change, you know. I think if I was recommending, thinking it through just biblically, is it wrong to meet people over the internet? No, absolutely not. There's no verse that's going to say, hey, you know, be careful of that. There is no verse.
Dial up, is it?
But I think you can take some biblical principles, and I think there's probably some things to guard against, some things to be careful in. So I think one thing would be, so how are you going to get to know that person online? Because I mean, Facebook, for example, it could be called fake book, because people only let you see what they want you to see. So how you're really going to get to know the reality of somebody when you really don't. I can think of people that I know that have got married that would have never met online. So my sister-in-law, Emma's sister, and our friend Simon, they're married. But when he first wanted, they were in our church, they were actually in our young adults group, and he liked her. And so we tried to feel her out as was there any interest, and she told us in no uncertain terms, there is no interest at all. I don't like him, I don't like the look of him, this just isn't working out.
She wasn't quite as harsh as that.
She was pretty clear that this is not happening. Negative.
Children will be.
So I was like, oh, okay, no dramas. And to the point where they actually got put on a serving team together, completely by accident. She's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. She just didn't want to do it. There was a real strong, no, thank you. But then over time, she gets to know him in a group context. And she actually starts to really like him. And now they're married. They've been married years. They got 3 kids, 4 kids.
3 kids.
3 kids. Kids everywhere in our wider family. Really love each other. But if that had been online dating, it would have no way got anywhere.
Right.
So I think sometimes it's my concern of online dating would be, how are you actually going to get to know the reality of somebody beyond swiping right, looking at their pictures and knowing a few things? It's like, man, I hate the thought of shopping for girls.
Right.
You know, we didn't, even when I was a kid, I was shopping for guys. But back when I was younger, they'd call it a meat market, and you really reacted to friends when it's like they're just trying to look on. It was like, oh mate, that's pretty desperate. So it's how are you going to do that in a way that's glorifying to the Lord, in a way that's worshipful, in a way that honors that lady or honors that man, that they're not just seen as objects that you're trying to work through. I think a second category that I'd probably want to think through is how are you going to trust God in this?
Right.
And so back when I was younger, no one on the whole would do online dating because it was an example of a lack of faith, that God can't possibly bring somebody into your life. You need to go looking, and you need to look everywhere you possibly can in case you miss them. And so my sister, for example, I come from a tiny town, as you know, and it is really the squat of nowhere. And so after I left and my brother left, my sister was probably the only person in the church. She was 21. She would have been the only person in the church in her 20s or late teen years. No one in. And so we were saying to her, Becky, do you want to move to Newport and come be with us? Because there's big groups here and you can meet people. And she really felt that she wanted to stay in Spalding, that that's where the Lord had for her. And she realized saying that probably meant she wasn't going to meet anybody and she'd be single. But that's what she believed the Lord wanted to do. And 2 years later, a guy came in to the church, a Greek guy that was moving over from South Africa, perfect for my sister, 2 years older than her, wanted to join their church. They got together, fell in love, married with kids. And it is such an illustration of she didn't need to do anything. The Lord would bring somebody, and she didn't need to be busy trying to manufacture. And so I think you've also got this trust in God. Of where does trust in God even picture in this situation? And then thirdly, probably how are you even thinking through what are you looking for? Back when we were dating, nearly everybody that we knew that dated and then got married, it was people in the church. Right. Nearly every time. And it was people in the church because then you weren't having the difficult decisions of different doctrine, different perspectives, different lots of things. You already knew about that. You already knew all about that. They were often in growth groups together and life groups. And so there's so much more life being done. That was the norm. And so I'm kind of thinking, so you meet somebody online and where do they go to church? And then if they eventually come to your church as you get close and they realize, I hate your church. And you go to their church and you realize, I hate their church. Okay, then you're different. You're looking at things real differently in terms of doctrine and what you stand for. So how's this going to work out? So I think that's a factor. I think a fourth thing would be, I think in Australia and the UK and in the West, we think of dating like a Hollywood movie. I think we're looking for the one or looking for this specific person. And I think sometimes we totally miss the people that are right in our face because we're not even thinking about it. And I think if we actually prayerfully consider as men and women, who is the Lord maybe actually brought into my life already? I think that takes way more guts. It takes way more guts for one of you boys to ask one of those girls out than it does to go on an online date and then there's no risk. But I actually think if a relationship works in the church, it's more likely to thrive.
Right. So when we said we were going to do breakout rooms later on, guys.
Yeah. We have designed these rooms specially.
Yeah. I think there's some really helpful thoughts there, Taylor. Emma, is there anything you wanted to add on to that about internet dating or?
No,
I think, obviously, we do have a fear of missing out culture, don't we? And, this whole idea of, maybe there's something better for me, across the whole spectrum, whether it's in our job or whether it's a church or whether it's a serving opportunity, an investment opportunity, or relationships. I think we have the same sort of approach, isn't it? I don't want to sell myself short somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, my only concern sometimes with the internet dating thing, and because I know there's lots of people in our community that use internet dating. And so, we don't want to hear this as like an internet dating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think it's just more things to be, mindful of and thinking about. My concern with it is, we've been talking about, and what we're going to be talking more about is about the purpose of dating is about clarity. Whereas I think sometimes the way internet dating is framed, it's more about compatibility, in the sense of, you troll through troll's probably the wrong, scroll, not troll. Troll. I'm not very good at the modern lingo.
It's just scroll. We scroll.
Scroll. Trolling's where you pay someone out. Isn't it?
Troll is more like what you would have done. We just scroll.
Trolling people. Oh, you look horrible. I hate your bangs. That wouldn't go down very well on Christian Connection, probably. Yeah. But what you're trying to do is you're kind of trying to market yourself, right? Like you're putting forward all these positive attributes about yourself, and you're looking through to find, what person is the best fit for me. But I think that's very different from trying to find clarity, because I think the calling of Christ for a guy is to lay down your life for someone,
Right.
and that isn't with a little caveat. Lay down your life for someone as long as you're really compatible, is it? It's just lay down your life. And so the process is trying to discern, is this someone who God is calling me to lay down my life for? And I just think that there can be quite a self-centered frame on the dating, sort of the online dating sort of thing. From what I've seen, I mean, I'm not in the online dating market, so I don't really.
Yeah, I think if somebody was, just think it through, because like you say, 20 years ago when we were dating, the internet was just getting a sort of idea, let alone.
It was a new thing. You would drop in a conversation.
We didn't even have smartphones.
Have you heard of the internet?
So give me an example. When we first started, before we were going out, one of the things I did was drop some tapes off to Emma House. It was my move, It's like that's how many years ago, cassette tapes. Our online dating was to go to another church to see if there was any pretty girls there. That's what that looked like. That was how it went. But I think so for me personally, if something happened to us, if Emma passed away, which is a terrible thought, but if she did and I was single again, I would not be doing online dating for me personally. But
you can remind me of that in the future.
I will definitely go before you, my love. Odds are
swiping there.
Sorry, guys, can't talk. Come on. But I think if somebody was going to do it, I think if somebody was then saying to me, you know what, I'm prayerfully considering as I meet these women, who could be somebody that I could lay my life down for? Who's somebody that inspires me to love Jesus more? Somebody who loves the church. Somebody that, as I got to know, I think, man, if I had children, I'd love them to be like that individual. I think this is somebody I could unite with and love Jesus all the more. Okay, then we're talking slightly different things. But on the whole, that's not what people are often thinking, I think, in a dating world. And so it depends what you're looking for.
Awesome. Well, some great thoughts there to get us started. We're going to go now to our breakout rooms, and really got a couple of questions for you guys to think about. We might post it on the wider chat and see what you guys think. First question, just to get you guys thinking, talking amongst yourselves, is what challenges you about what the Bible teaches about relationships? Okay. That can be based on reflections you've had from things you've read in the past, passages you know already, or from the article as you guys have been reading and thinking about that. So what challenges you about what the Bible teaches about relationships? First question. And then the second question is just what questions do you have that you'd like to ask the panel about dating and relationships? Now, if you're not feeling comfortable to ask your question, maybe, you're a little bit shy and quiet like Paul, then that's okay.
Yeah, he's so shy.
He's very shy.
He should be in a Liverpool top.
And that's what we like about him. So, kind.
Why is he breathing his nipple?
I don't know.
No one knows.
I'm less shy if you guys want. I'm happy to troll over the top of you for the rest of the night if you want.
You're in groups. I'm going to troll away.
So we're going to put you in your breakout groups, and so chat about those two questions. So they're up on the group chat. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come back, and it's going to be over to the panel to ask the questions that you guys would like to ask and talk about things that you guys would like to talk about.
I'll just get in quickly. I'll tell you. My group's question, they were very, very adamant that you need to answer. Emma, you said your parents had a bunch of rules for you guys.
Yeah.
And you obeyed most of them. They really wanted to know which ones did you break? That was particularly Clara's question. So,
seeing that I didn't answer it that way, I'll leave that all to Emma.
Clara and Brooke had that particularly wanted to know that.
Yeah. There's an evil mind in some of you.
They were also
know the goss.
They were also wondering. They specifically asked, would it be possible for church? Because I think we've complicated dating too far in the modern age. They were wondering if we could set up a system within the church to just arrange marriages.
Yes. we were going to start with you, Paul. Yeah, that's the first.
Phil Hines was recommending a 1 hour process.
1 hour. Ooh.
I don't think it even takes that long.
He gave an example from the Old Testament. I can't remember which one.
I think we should just do it like Charlotte just put you all in groups. We just press a button.
Random.
That's it, guys.
The problem with that, Dave, is that it doesn't pick by gender.
That would be an issue. That would be an issue. Yeah, that's okay. Abandon.
So, or are you saying that if you end up with someone as the same gender as you, that's it? You're single for life?
I'm not even going to answer that, for my own safety.
I'm afraid so.
I think I've done a good job speaking for my group. They asked me to be a spokesperson, so I'll come back in with more stuff later if you want.
Are you actually in bed, or are you just resting, or what is this that I'm seeing before me?
No, I'm definitely in bed.
I told you they're in bed.
But you've still got your clothes on.
No, I've got my pajamas with a Liverpool top on top.
What do you want, Dave?
Why do you need to know that?
Well, are you homeless in Hornsby, or what exactly? Little t-shirt in bed.
Let's briefly think about that question. Are you in bed, Paul? Yes. Are you homeless, Paul?
Well,
probably not.
Yes.
Bed can be many things. It could be a piece of cardboard on a floor. Here I am in bed.
Except I'm inside a room.
Let's reclaim the conversation. And
coming back.
Excellent question.
Heather, don't take us off those other distractions anymore.
Do you want to repeat that question that you had for Emma?
Yeah, okay. I'll repeat the two questions. Firstly, can Sovereign Grace Churches establish a marriage arrangement system, please? That Phil Hines would like it to be 1 hour long, the process. And then the second question was, Emma, you mentioned a bunch of rules your parents had for you, but you said you didn't obey all of them. Which ones did you break?
Let me answer the first question. Would we do the 1 hour long arranged marriages? No, but our Sovereign Grace churches in India do.
Whoa, really?
So I think one of the things that's always worth thinking through, or even thinking through the dating thing, we are so culturally traditioned and conditioned. We are so thinking, oh, no. I get to look at hundreds of women and I choose. And they would look at that and go, why? That's a very Hollywood way of looking at love. So that our pastor in India, he met his wife as they were getting married. And his whole premise is, I will lay my life down for her and she will lay her life down for me. And then over time they fell in love, but they gave themselves. So if you think of what Paul Tripp talks about, that true love is sacrifice. Whereas we say true love is what I feel and I've got to feel something. And they would say true love is sacrifice and you give yourself to the other person sacrificially. So one of the interesting things for me in traveling is you learn a lot of how culturally conditioned we are to the way we think it through. But no, we probably won't do it here for your own safety. But it is helpful to know not everybody thinks like us. Not everybody plays it through like this. It's different. All right, yours.
And you can always move to Sovereign Grace Church in India.
You could go to India and we can sort you guys out.
Paul does enjoy curry. I mean,
He likes a curry.
He does.
You get a couple of free poppadoms on the marriage day.
We had curry for dinner tonight and last night.
Very good. What did we break? I think actually the only one we really broke sometimes.
My memory's foggy.
Was Dave had his own house. We were not supposed to be at his house by ourselves. Because he did have a couple of roommates that lived with him and we weren't supposed to be there if they weren't there. And I think sometimes we were there when they weren't there. I think that's valid.
Yeah, not deliberately. Not deliberately like, oh, let's go over because they're not there. But like if you get there and you're like, they're not there, it'd be like, oh.
What other things were on the list?
On the list.
Well, we had, her dad was hilarious. So basically, once her dad was going to bed, I was leaving. And so there'd be a couple of times where we'd just be like watching TV and he'd be like, well, I'm going to bed now. Good to see you. Okay, well, bye everybody. So that was always quite funny. But one of the things that I did like about our dating is now on the premise that we were quite young still. We dated as a family in a sense. It wasn't just Emma and I off doing our thing. It was, in some ways, I became part of their family.
Right.
So I really got to know their family. They got to know me a ton. And that was actually beautiful. In terms of people that really got to know you. And it was that was fun. That was really good. And certainly from my perspective on dating, particularly if you're younger and still living at home. So Josh and Amy, listen up. And I would be far more thinking, hey, okay, great. Let's get them let's come on over and have dinner with us. And I'd be way thinking that rather than just, oh, they're out there. Because you can disciple if people are in front of you, but if they're just out there, you can't help it all. That was good. That was a good thing, part of it.
I think, Shara, we did that a lot, didn't we, when we were dating?
Well, yeah, you came over.
We hung out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that was probably slightly different because I was a lot older and like really can get married, and I think they were a bit concerned like that I was like pressuring you into something. Yeah.
She was 18, you had grey hair.
That's it. So yeah. So that was helpful for your parents, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And it was nice for us to also we didn't want to hang out at your place, which was Andrew's house, because similar, it was housemates.
Yeah, it was the same issue. Yeah.
And so
Andrew's house was like Clara's house, like pokey and small.
Yeah.
So then we just made sure that anytime we were hung out, it was in my parents' living room, basically, not even in my room. We didn't hang out there. So it was just, my mum was in the kitchen. She could see us. That was just how we spent time. Brendan learned a lot of Cantonese.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I learnt when they say quai lo.
It means white person.
Yep.
I did think just mentioning this piece, just being honest. I think if two people start going out and there is no clarity on what your boundaries are,
right,
you will be having sex. Definitely. Just think, unless you don't find the other person attractive, in which case you got other issues. You just think you are going to have problems. Because I think without those clear boundaries of, so Emma's mum and dad were great in the sense of, hey, we always want to have people around you. It was helpful. I think if we hadn't had that, we would have been in massive trouble all the time. Because I found her very attractive, and obviously she found me very attractive. So it was a challenge. But I think that is one of the most underestimated pieces, that we love the Lord and we want to keep pure. Wonderful. But if you actually fancy them, you're going to feel pretty different at different times. Mm-hmm. And then what are you going to do to protect yourself in that?
So true. And that's one of the things that Marshall Segal talks about in the article, about one of the reasons why people go into dating when they probably shouldn't be dating, is that he starts off there. It's that they underestimate Satan's devices in dating, the dangers that are attached to, dating. Because there's loads of them, but we don't think about that, or we minimize that. We think, she'll be right. Like, it's all good. And I think because we live in such a culture that says sexual sin is no biggie. And where we've massively downplayed like the standard God calls us to. So like some verses that I was thinking about this week, like Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount talks about the standard that he expects for people across the board, which applies equally in a dating relationship. You've heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. This is Matthew 5:27-28. You've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So from Jesus' perspective, even lustfully looking at another person, even an intention of the heart, a desire in the heart, looking lustfully at a person is the same in what Jesus is saying here as committing adultery. Or 1 Timothy 5:1-2. Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all purity.
Yeah.
So God's standard is for treating, people of the opposite sex that are not, part of our family, that we're not married to, absolute purity as you would with someone who's your literal sister or your literal brother. So there is massive things at stake, and yet we don't really give it that same degree of weight when we're thinking about dating, what our boundaries are going to be and how we're going to be serious about honoring the Lord, with our relationships.
I think as well, the verse where he talks about flee sexual immorality.
Yep.
I think it's one that we, for whatever reason, as a relationship gets serious, we don't think that applies to that relationship.
Right.
Because we're kind of, together.
We're almost.
And even when you then make mistakes, it's like, oh, that was probably really bad, but we're going to be together. And that is not the way that's written. That is written as flee sexual immorality. And so I think it was one of the things you two actually did really well. And when you were dating, there was just that clear guidelines of this is what's acceptable, this isn't. These are the environments we want to be in. These will after we talk to you. But it was something you did really well. And you just saved yourself a ton of heartache.
It's true.
Because how many couples we would know that have ended up physically intimate on the premise of we'll be together, and then they're not together. And then the woman or the guy ends up watching that woman or that man marry somebody else in the church, and they still have memories, and you're like, this is a disaster. It does great damage and really spoils things. So you can see why the Lord is just like, no, that's not right.
Just thinking Ephesians 5:3 says, but sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not even be named among you, as is proper among the saints.
Yeah, and that's when people are crazy, right? So I'll give you an illustration. So couple going out, he has his own place. He thinks it's probably going to be fine for her to come over and just hang out.
Yeah.
But suddenly you're 11 o'clock at night. I think we'll be fine just lying down watching a movie, and I think we'll be fine. And then he gives her a little kiss, and he's like, I quite like that. And she's tired. And suddenly there's quite a lot of kissing going on. And how many stories I've heard where they end up blowing it, and you think that could have totally been avoided just by you not being so naive to this situation. You don't think when King David fell, the whole premise when kings went out to war, he didn't go. He was a king. He just stayed home. And then, there's Bathsheba. She looks nice. There's certain situations that I think we think, I'll be fine, that I think Satan loves to lure us in to you'll be fine, which is a disaster in my experience. It's just a disaster.
And so armed with that knowledge, if we're thinking about dating, then how can we just dive into a relationship with no thought then for, what sort of boundaries we're going to have, what sort of, how we're going to approach it in a way that's going to honor God. I think we're really deceived, aren't we? We've bought a lie that, we'll just make it up as we go along. She'll be fine. We can play around a bit.
It's an area that I don't think I ever did very well in. Yeah. But I think here's the ideal. The ideal is that a guy starts going out with a girl and he starts to treat her as if she could still be somebody else's wife one day until she becomes his wife. So in the sense that if I'm going out with Emma and we don't get married and I see her marry somebody else, I can look that guy in the eye and think, I treated her right, and not well, yeah, I kind of was there with her as well. And I just think that is so dishonoring.
You know, I think one of the lies we buy when it comes to this sort of thing, like the boundaries and things, and I'm mindful that we probably need to move on to other things for people to talk to, because no one's probably even asked this question.
No one's even asking this question. They're not even entertained by these
But this is a great hobby horse. And so, but I was just thinking, you know, how we can, like, you know, talk about and buy the lie that it's all completely subjective. You know, like, you know, you've got your set of rules, you know, I got my set of rules, you know, we need to just, you know, figure out what's right for me and my heart, that sort of thing. And there's some element of truth in that.
Yes, there's
some element of truth in that. But at the same breath, but sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not be even named among you still applies. And, you know, treat your, you know, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all purity still applies. You know, Jesus's message of, you know, you've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery, but I tell you the truth, he who even looks lustfully at another woman keeps adultery with her in his heart, still applies. So though it's true that there might be some differences of conscience, those passages still apply when it comes to, you know, thinking about boundaries and things. All right.
And you think about just, which does work into all dating, the amount of proverbs that talk about that basically the fool is the one that is right in his own eyes.
Right.
I that was me when I was until I was about 25. Idiot. Would never think about asking anybody anything. And I think nearly all of my major mistakes could have been avoided if I'd just been willing to ask. Right. But I would have just looked at you as my pastor and said, yeah, thanks for that. That's fine. Don't know what he's on. Right, carrying on. I'm not even engaging with you. I was so proud and arrogant, and it just caused many disasters.
Awesome. So true.
Awesome disasters.
Awesome.
Those things were linked. Awesome disasters.
So do we want to ask what questions they had from the
Yes. What questions would you like to ask? Text them in to me.
Apart from arranged marriages.
Or
you got my number. Shara post my number. Or you can just call them out.
I'm happy to do arranged marriages for a fee. Because it's not in my job description, but for the right price.
Brooke and I are both seriously considering that offer, Dave, so thank you.
Okay. Yes, excellent.
No, I had a question for Bren. What was the least helpful and the most helpful thing you did in your period of waiting? And that period of singleness, that wanting to be married?
Right.
Not singleness where you're just kind of happy to be single, but singleness and with that want and desire for marriage. What was the best thing and what was the worst thing?
Oh, that's excellent.
That's such a good question. I mean, it's really hard because as I think back on that time, I feel like, you know, it was really the sovereignty and kindness of God and his grace in my life ultimately that brought me to a place of being content. I think I didn't really find contentment, I think, in my singleness up until pretty close to before Shara and I ended up dating, to be honest. And so, I was pretty lonely when I was living in Indonesia, 24, 25 years of age. And then, you know, when the church plant started back again, you know, I was really wrestling with that. And I felt like I was just a bit of a weirdo. And then girls would get to know me a little bit, discover that I'm a bit of a weirdo and they wouldn't really be interested, sort of thing. And that was what I genuinely believed about myself, rather than this is the sovereign kindness and goodness of God. I think I often tried to take matters into my own hands quite a bit. And I probably oscillated between that, trying to take matters too much into my own hands. And then on the other side of things, perhaps being so fearful about being rejected that I avoid relationships like the plague as well. So I kind of went on this weird oscillation between like overly pursuing something to flipping in the other direction and completely avoiding relationships, if that makes sense, out of fear that, you know, what if this person turns me down, how will I cope with it, sort of thing, I think. So what are the things that I did that were least helpful? I think I I think I was too reliant on myself, to be honest. My focus and my gaze was all about me and what I was doing, rather than, you know, pressing into you know, grow in my relationship with God and find that contentment in Christ. I knew that that's what I should be doing, right? But I think it was just a real struggle for me. And I think a lot of things I was still under the surface believing about myself that just weren't true. And then what was the most helpful thing? Do you know what? In the end, actually, the most helpful thing was actually nothing that I actually did. It was actually someone pointing out something to me. I think, I don't know who it was that said it, but someone said to me, see, Andrew, when, for a lot of the time at church, Andrew Lung, who often leads worship at our church, most of you guys would know him, he was a single guy. He'd come to the church married, and his wife had left him, decided she wasn't a Christian, and all this sort of thing. And so I'd moved in with him and been living with him. And it was when someone said to me, actually, hey, Brendan, you know, isn't it amazing how you've been able to really help and be a blessing to Andrew as a single guy. And it was like, it seemed so obvious, like that was the case, but for some reason, I just hadn't seen it. And I think it was just in that moment, it dawned on me that actually God had a purpose for me in being single. I don't think I knew that intellectually, but I just don't think I really believed it.
Yeah.
And I think in that moment, it's just like God had opened my eyes to see, no, this isn't just a horrible mistake. You might be just a weirdo, but I still even love you.
Loves weirdos.
As a weirdo. I love weirdos.
Loves weirdos.
I love
And that's not the reason why you're single. Well, it's not just because you're a weirdo and you've sort of evaded my plan. It's because, no, I plan to use you in this season, and look how I've used you in a way that, you know, in ways that would never have been possible if you were married. And I think then I just saw it, and I think I found a lot more contentment in my singleness as a result of that. But I don't think that was probably not too, it was maybe, I'd just come out of a situation where I tried to forcefully take matters into my own hands with someone else. And it had all gone horribly wrong. And I was a bit disillusioned, and I was thinking, girls are just too painful. I don't want to go there anymore.
This weirdo is done.
I'm done with it. And then, you know, it was about 4 to 5 months after that Shara and I ended up dating and then getting married. So I don't know if that answers your question, Jen.
It does. So my follow-up question, if that's allowed, if the tossing between the I'm desperate and need to have a girlfriend now and ill girls get away from me is unhelpful, what does contentment look like in that middle zone? Like still,
Very good.
Well, I got a verse that I think that I remember actually. It was a sermon by Paul Dale, and it really spoke to me, and I still remember it. And I'd never really, because it's a very common Christian verse that you know.
Tries my COVID.
If I can even find it, because this will be embarrassing if I can't find it.
Just use the search function on the iPhone Bible.
He says this. Philippians 4:11. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me.
Yes.
And Paul, when he preached that, was explaining how the secret of finding contentment in all things is really knowing that you can face any and every circumstance through the power of Christ. And I think, you know, what was I failing to do when I'm sort of swaying from, you know, one extreme of like, I'm desperate here, I'm going to do whatever it takes to land me, you know, a wife, a girlfriend, or I can't even bear the thought of being rejected by someone. I'm just going to have nothing. I don't want anything to do with God. Like, I think I'm looking at the future. I'm saying, I don't know if I can face the future faithfully, joyfully with you know, as a Christian, if I'm to remain single, so I need to do something about it. I don't know if I can trust you, God, with being in this situation. And the thing I was missing is, no, whatever God has for me in the future, I can face it because Christ is with me. He will strengthen me. He's got a good purpose and a plan for me. And so I can be satisfied with what I have right now. I can be more than that. I can be joyful for what I have right now because I have that confidence that Christ is with me. So I think that was the heart issue of what my wrestle was with Jen. Like, I think it was just really coming to believe that to be true. Yeah.
Thanks.
I think one of the things to encourage you about Brendan as well, because I've known him for 10 and a half years now, or 11 years or whatever. Long time. I was only 23 when we met back in the day. I think one of the things that's always been impressive about Brendan, and I think it in part answers part of your question, Jen, but might be hard for him to say. I think one of the primary things that distinguishes somebody who's content is they're redeeming the time that God has given them to serve him.
Yeah.
And I think you have a choice. You either redeem the time that God's given you to serve him, or you redeem the time to try and find a spouse.
Yeah.
I probably would have been in the try and find the spouse camp. So as soon as I didn't have a girlfriend, I got to find another one. And I think one of the things you did well very quickly was, hey, I'm all in. You know, I'm all in. I'm all in for preaching. I'm all in for putting the chairs out. I'll babysit for you. What do you want? I'm just all in. It was just, I've got this time that I want to use for Jesus. I think that's excellent. You know, I think that's to be commended. And I think that helps with contentment in the right sense, because I'm doing what God's calling me to do. I'm worshiping the audience of one, and I believe he'll bring somebody into my life when it's his time, rather than me feeling a pressure to have to make it happen. I think that is to be commended and a great gift. And if I'm single, that's attractive. You know, it's actually, hey, this guy or this girl really loves the Lord. They're not just spending their whole life trying to find a spouse. And that's good. And I think one of the things Matt Chandler talks about is when you're looking for a partner, when you're looking for a spouse, one of the things that's so important to find out is, what are they like in suffering? And for some, singleness can be suffering. For some, it's not. But for some, it can be. This is hard. I'm finding it hard. I really want to be with somebody. You're going to find out a lot about a person. As do they find this a joy, or do they complain? You know, is there a faith in this where they're redeeming the time, or do they just moan about it all the time and they're down in the dumps because God hasn't been faithful? And you're going to find a ton about somebody. Because that person, if you marry them, will actually still be like it. They'll still be the same. It'll just change. Circumstances will change. They'll still be them.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That answers my questions perfectly. Thank you.
You're welcome. How can you not answer that headrest?
I know, it's impressive.
So
How can you not?
It's so hard.
I mean, cabaret.
You might not be able to see it. It's actually a dark room, but it's the light from their lights
It's the light
shining through the screen that is
wow.
creating the...
When that is fully burrito charged, wow.
My indoor jungle has now spread to the headboard as well.
Oh, I do see.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Be aware. It's coming. It's going to be all around. Greenness.
Good. Good.
What about the question that you guys had asked?
I have a question. Can I ask?
Okay, good.
What would your advice be, or what would your perspective be biblically on the roles of guys and girls in pursuing somebody? So initiating, asking somebody out, should it be more in the guys' camp, or is there something that really either could do?
Good one.
It's a good question. I mean, like, one of the things we were talking about last time we did a night on relationships is even the category of dating is not in the Bible. You know,
Why is Josh laughing?
The Bible has... Josh has lost the plot.
Josh has lost it. So there's obviously some private discussion going on that's tickled him.
Someone's
Sorry about that push.
Someone's been asked out.
Somebody's been asked out tonight,
live by a girl, and they're wondering if is that sinful? Yeah. Look, I don't think it's sinful at all. Like, you know, I don't think the Bible prescribes a lot of different things. Like we've even been talking about how the whole idea of even dating is like this Western thing, but it's more than just a Western thing. It's a Western thing of like the last 100 years, right? It's there's a lot of stuff that we assume everybody in the world's doing that is really our culture. I think there's lots that the Bible has to say about what a relationship should look like. That's absolutely for sure, and the standards that God calls us to. But is it right or wrong for a lady to ask a guy out? If they're both interested in each other and the guy lacks the bottle, so
chicken legs.
But we all relate to that. I've been chicken legs, like I used to try and wait until I was absolutely sure it was in the bag, because I was just
like she's wearing a wedding dress.
She's almost saying, yes.
Yes.
Is there something?
Is there a question you have for me?
And they'll be like, okay, safe. Coast is clear. Which I know some of you might find hard to believe, but it's true. Look, I think if we're thinking about complementarianism, right, and what does the Bible teach about gender roles and things. By the way, we're going to do this in 4 weeks. We're going to talk more about gender roles with Riley and Maddie on the show. So
excellent.
The show.
On the show.
Suddenly we're a show. Anyway.
Let's go from Young Adults to a show. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't realise we had a Sovereign Grace show.
Sovereign Grace Tonight, it's called.
Oh, this is awesome. Do we have an after show? Yeah, an after show. We can do a pre-show. I love this.
No,
I love
You were
this.
observing earlier, Brendan, that you do really resemble a Christian Grant Denyer.
Oh, really? Okay.
Most boys on.
Is that purely about the height, or?
It doesn't hurt.
Okay.
It's okay. I mean, if they're bringing out Lord of the Rings 4, he's going to have a leading role. It's great. It's ideal.
I have been called Frodo Baggins in the past when I had really long hair, but anyway, that's another story.
Everybody needs a Samwise Gamgee. I have
true.
one.
That's literally, they called out, they drove past. I was quite wavy long hair. And this was about the time of the Lord of the Rings. They wound down their window on multiple occasions. I don't know if it was the same people or different people. In Wollongong, where I was living in Wollongong.
Different people, I'm sure.
And they called out, Frodo! It's me, Sam! Sam, it's me! I feel like, oh, no, I keep walking.
Oh, that is awkward.
So, anyway, yes, is it wrong or how should a girl go about it? I guess what we, in talking about biblical manhood and womanhood, we're talking about the calling that guys have on their lives to, in the church and in the home, to model something of Christ in the way, they exercise spiritual leadership, and in the way that, they, especially in the context of marriage, sacrificially lay down their lives to love and serve their wives, right? Mm-hmm. So does that mean, therefore, that it's wrong for a lady to, say, express interest in a guy? Like, absolutely not.
Right.
I think you would hope that, if a guy was interested, that he might be able to sort of take some of that initiative. And I know there's things that girls can do as well if you're, as a lady, not feeling comfortable to really ask a guy out. One thing we've been talking about in the past is just being really supportive of the guy, like complimenting him, giving him repeated examples of where you see God's grace at work in his life. Can be
daily text,
making it basically super easy for that
just
guy to know
that
you really respect him for the type of guy that he is.
Yeah.
You're making it so easy for him that if he was interested in wanting to get to know you more, that he would feel comfortable to do that. But is it wrong? No. Who is that? Is that this Paul?
Oh, he's just gone. Yeah, his head's gone. Yeah, I'd agree with Brendan saying I don't think there's a biblical premise, because there's not really a biblical premise for dating. So we're not going to find chapter and verse on it at all. I would say to you ladies, is it wrong for you to ask a guy out? Definitely not. But it's possibly a bad sign. I'd be keen for you ladies to have men that at least have got the bottle to ask you out. And if they haven't got the bottle for that, then I'd be concerned that 6 weeks down the track, you're still going to be, I think sometimes you see relationships and the lady is kind of the mum and the guy is tagging along. And I think you don't want to be fostering that thing. I think it would be great to, if a guy, I'd be thinking, get a guy to ask you out. I'd also be saying to you brothers, Get your finger out, boys. I'm seeing lots of women here. Let's get on with it. You know, I think if you are in the stage where you can get married, get on with it. You know, what are you waiting for? And I think, ladies, it is like that. They need your attention. There's nothing wrong with that. And so, no biblical prerequisites, but I'd be like, I need to preach to men more and get them going and get them thinking. 30 seconds of courage, gentlemen.
Yeah, it can be tough. It can be tough to work that courage up.
Yeah.
I know I talked to Charlotte for ages. Remember when I asked you out for a year and I talked about random stuff for ages? That was just plucking up the courage.
I was like, I've got a 50-minute break.
So I said, what's your favorite movie or something?
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
It's awkward, isn't it? I mean, it's hard, but yeah, right. I think that's right, and I think what Dave's saying is right. You know,
but at the same time, I think what you can do as a lady, which Brent has alluded to, I think you can position yourself to be somebody that he might likely love. So I think when you are sending a guy, for example, a text saying, "I'm just thinking about you, praying for you. How can I be praying for you?" That's not making a move, but it is definitely it is very meaningful for a man to know, hey, she's actually noticed me. He's more likely to turn around and go, "Do you want to get a coffee?" You know, than he is like, "Oh yeah, thanks." Or if he just says, "Oh yeah, thanks," and you've texted him for the 7th day running, he's going, "Oh, this is really nice, thank you." It's probably not going to be happening, you know, or unlikely that he's ready to make a move. But I think good friendships, you just got to go for it, you know. If no one goes for it, everybody just stands off, and then I suppose you end up going online and trying to date somebody you've never met because they live in Perth, and you're trying to figure out how this is going to work. That doesn't take any courage at all. What takes courage is dating people that you actually know, but far more likely to stay together and far more likely to have people around you that can bring counsel and help. And you two were a great example of that. Ollie and Nellie were a great example of that. Right. Andrew and Kat were an example of that. We actually got several people in our church that have got married and just met each other right here, and then they were able to be helped.
Yeah.
We actually had loads of it.
It's true. Yeah, we had loads of it within like the space of 10 months, actually.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, we did.
Almost went broke buying wedding gifts.
Pretty much. So it was the kiss of death to the Young Adult show as well.
It was.
Because everyone just got married and you're like, oh, we're done. No one's left.
Another question, is there, Paul? Is that something you...
Yeah, that was like was wafting or...
I was just clicking my fingers because that's how fast everyone disappeared, apparently.
Pretty much. I thought you were just about turning the light off because you were done, tired. You're in your gym jams. We're all done.
Close.
He's bored now. He's going.
Is there another question?
You got one?
Yeah, Nikki's got one.
You know how the Bible talks about guarding your heart? How do you do that when you're single and, I don't know, you might be interested in someone, they're not interested in you, those kind of situations? Like, how do you go about guarding your heart?
Emma?
Oh, gosh. How do you go about guarding your heart? If you're interested in someone, they might not be interested in you.
It's hard, isn't it?
Very hard. It's it's definitely one of those things that's way easier said than done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess if it was me, I would probably be looking to have some people around me, some ladies around me that were asking me about that. Well, like, was I spending a long time thinking about the what ifs, or am I going out my way too much to make contacts, like that is maybe unhelpful for me if I'm trying to guard my heart? And I think probably just praying. I think that would probably be the biggest thing as well, just praying that God would help me, because I think hearts are so hard for us to navigate. So I think I would be praying, if it was me, that God would help me guard my heart if it wasn't the right relationship for me to be looking at and pursuing. But likewise, if it is, that God would open up the door for that to move forward. So I think it would just be something I have to be continually taking to the Lord and laying at his feet and asking him help, and then pulling in close friends around me to help me in that process. And am I treating them any differently to I would somebody else? If I'm seeking to guard my heart, then really one guy shouldn't be treating any differently to another guy who maybe I'm not interested in. So just things like that. But I think it's super hard, very hard. Charlotte, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying about just in terms of, are you making too much contact? Just the thought of, are we trying? I guess I speak from experience with liking Brendan for over 2 years before we started dating. So just the thought of to make the point of not making every church outing or young adults outing being how much contact we made in that time, and looking instead for places to serve others, because it otherwise makes it about me and him, which obviously for a long time wasn't. And then also praying, I think, like you said, praying for helping clarify what are the characteristics that I'm attracted to this person about, and asking God to pray for characteristics of those in my future husband. So rather than the whole time praying about Brendan, but praying for someone who would lead me, or, you know, someone's godly, someone who's servant-hearted. So that helped me guide my heart. Because it wasn't, my prayers weren't about, why won't Brendan notice me, but more about, I know, God, that you would want such a godly character for me if that's what you have for me, a husband. So let me pray for that instead. So that was helpful.
Yeah, not easy.
It's a tough one. Good question. Good question, Nikki.
Yeah.
I got a question in here. A few people started sending through questions, which is great. How would you go about dealing with relations with a non-Christian? A lot of my peers are of the opposite gender and they're not Christian, and it's difficult not to develop feelings even when they have the same values but aren't centered around Christ. So you got peers, maybe people at work or elsewhere, they're not Christians. It's hard then to not to develop feelings. How do you go about, how do you go about dealing with those relationships without, developing feelings and so forth?
Well, I think for me, it would be like me saying, no different, I'm married, but how can I be around all these beautiful women all the time and not develop feelings? There's just certain things that you're like, well, I can't because I'm married. And I think for a single, it's working out, I am primarily married to Christ, which means I am not going to get hooked up with a non-believer. It's just not going to happen. It's a decision that you make theologically and philosophically and in heart, I think. You only develop feelings with somebody when you start to get sucked in and you start to engage, rather than going, no, I'm not going there. And I think any hint, to be quite frank, of dating an unbeliever and then potentially marrying an unbeliever is totally unbiblical, totally stupid, and counter the Bible. In the Bible, when you become a Christian, it means you follow Christ. And then within following Christ, the idea that my unbelieving friend has the same values as me. No, they don't. We just read that this morning. They are alienated from God, they're hostile in mind, and they're doing evil deeds. So they might be a nice person, but I can assure you they are not on the same page as you. They're not doing the same thing as you. You are in the kingdom of light, they are in the kingdom of dark. You are alive in Christ. They are dead in their transgressions and sins. They might be nice, but they are definitely not in the same place as you. And if they're a man, they will definitely not be able to lead you in Christ. And if they're a woman, they will definitely not be disposed to really following you as you seek to lead the family in Christ. It just won't happen. And so I think you're just totally on a non-starter. The Bible's very clear that we're not to be unequally yoked. And that is an illustration of being unequally yoked massively. So I think, so the original question of how do you avoid feelings with somebody in the office or you're around somebody all the time, you're just aware, I'm married to Christ, this isn't going to happen. Stop it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the primary value you have as a Christian, if we're talking about values, is to honor Christ in all things.
Yeah.
And straight away, when you put it in that light, that person, regardless of whether there's some Western values you might hold the same, the primary value of every Christian, therefore, is completely opposite, because only someone who's following Christ, anyone who's a Christian, sees the world through the lens of the glory of Christ in all things.
Yes.
You know? And so, yeah, you really are different there. And I think possibly the danger is buying the lie that there really is this commonality and common ground. So,
and I think just speaking, I mean, I've been a pastor for 20 years, interacted with numerous couples where one of them is a believer, the other person is not. I have no relationships with those types of families where the wife, if she's a believer, or the husband, if he's a believer and he's married, are saying, no, this is great. They would all say, this is very, very hard. And so they might not shout about that. They might not be bringing it up in group all the time. But behind the scenes, you're aware this is very, very difficult for them. And because the biggest thing in their life, which is Christ, is not shared. I think in reality, after 20 years of pastoral ministry, we have Christian couples in our church that desperately struggle in their marriages. You add that 1,000-fold as soon as one of them's not a believer. But I think Satan lies to us that maybe you'll be the exception. You'll be slightly different from everybody else on the planet. It'll be okay. And then we watch Hollywood movies and we think it'll be okay. You know, it's just, it'll be okay. It will not be okay. It's highly unlikely it will be okay. And it's just a disaster. And if it wasn't a disaster, I would say to you, go for it. This is going to be great. But it actually would be cruel to do that. Because it's not going to be great. You're being duped.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing is for sure, Christ will not be at the center of your relationship.
You'll have to push him to the side.
And it's really the kindness of God that he forbids in the scriptures for, you know, the passages in 2 Corinthians 6, if you want to look it up. But so it talks about do not be yoked to unbelievers. And goes on to talk about what do idols have in common with Christ, you know. And it's the God's kindness that he does that for us, gives that firm commandment because he knows what sort of bad fruit it produces. And so, absolutely.
Just on that quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, partly on this one, and partly I think this links into your question as well, Nikki, what you were just answering. I just came to mind the verse Psalm 37:4, where it says, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, I think often people use that and they think, oh, great, he's going to give me exactly what I want. Whereas I think what it's saying is if we delight ourselves in the Lord, if we throw ourselves into our relationship with him, our hearts are going to want his desires and follow his desires and follow his plan for us. So I think whether that be God in our heart, if there's a relationship we want to pursue with a believer. But I think also if you're delighting in the Lord and following his, you're not going to want to pursue a relationship with an unbeliever, however much you might respect the way they live or appreciate their friendship. I think if we're delighting in the Lord, you're not going to actually want to take it that step further. Not that there might be a battle. I'm not saying there will never be that battle in there. I think definitely that can happen.
Temptation will be real.
But overridingly, you're not going to want to pursue a relationship with them because your first and foremost love is Jesus, and you'll want him to be the Lord of your life in every area, including your marriage.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great question.
Excellent question. Here's one for you, Dave. What is the balance between trust and action in dating? So I can imagine the situation where someone's saying, I really want to trust God with this. I want to be faithful. I want to find contentment in Christ. I want to be, really trusting him. But also I'm realizing that, faith that works. We were talking about that when we were preaching James. It's not necessarily about, sitting back and, I'm going to lock myself in the closet, keep praying and pray that someone comes out of the sky or flies out of the sky. Is there a balance there? What does it look like? How do you?
That's a great question. I think my only thought on that, because it's a really important question, because you can't just be like, you could, but I'm just not going to do anything and see what. I think my pushback on that, or my answer to that would be, what is your motive in doing whatever it is? It's the motive that will say whether you're trusting or whether you are desperately striving. So I think boundaries might help with that. So for example, honestly, like I said before, if I entered the online dating world, I know that I would just be like, the world is at my feet. There's no possible way I could go through that trusting God. For me, given my personality, I'd be scaring it all the time, working out, Lord, guide me. I would just be into it. And so I just think it's working out what are the boundaries for your personality type that are going to enable you to generally say, I'm trusting the Lord, but this is what I'm doing to seek to find a godly husband or a godly wife. I think on the whole, we overcomplicate that. I think on the whole, that looks like me passionately serving in my church, passionately becoming the best man or woman that I can for the glory of the Lord, and keeping my eyes open to who might be out there that I could get to know. That would probably be what I would do. And much beyond that, for me, I would be like, oh, I think I might just pop along to Hillsong. And then if somebody said, why are you going? Well, there's 3,000 girls there. You've got to be honest with what is your motive in doing this thing. So I probably wouldn't be able to do that, trusting God. I'd be thinking I'm going to try and arrange this so that if God dies, I'm still going to find the person I need. Motive, I think, is the thing.
And then I guess when you're saying personality-wise, I mean, we can deceive ourselves to gather people around us and leaders that we have in order to ask them, what do you think is my
I actually think it should be common, but I don't think it is common. I think it should be common for in our growth group, be bringing up, this is where I'm at in my singleness. Either I'm fine with it, or man, I find it really quite hard, and I'm really trying to find a wife. And guys, could you help me? Because I'm aware when I'm going to such and such a place, I'm striving. My mind's going there. I'm just thinking about it all the time. And we need to do far more in community than we think. But often we are so private, we're just going to do it all by ourselves. And I think that's the big mistake. You can't discern motives by yourself.
No.
You need others to ask you questions and work out. So, for example, when we started dating, my gospel community leader at the time bought me a set of bicycle brakes. A set of bicycle brakes. I'm like, I unwrapped them. He's like, I got your gift. Oh, thanks for that. Open it. What are these for? He's like, so that you can remember that you need to take your time with Emma because you're in a rush and you need to be slowing down.
There was context to that.
So I put them on my shelf. But it was helpful because I needed that type of counsel in my life. Otherwise, I was just constantly in a rush, always in a rush. I couldn't discern my own motives. Not good enough.
The verse I was thinking of is Jesus says in Matthew 6:33, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And one of the things, I don't know if it's in the article that we were reading from Marshall or one of these other ones, but he talks about missional dating, not in the sense of flirt to convert, in the sense of missional dating, which is also known as willful disobedience, missional dating, but in the sense of looking for people to date as you go about the mission, and talking about how the mission field is the best place to meet the type of person that you want to marry, busying yourself, serving Jesus, with like-minded people that are busy serving Jesus is a great way to meet people. And I wonder if possibly that is an example of striking the balance. It's almost, you're getting out there, but you're getting out there serving Jesus, and that becomes the vehicle by which you are exposed to
I think another point on that question is, I think we don't like to talk about it, but I think dating or finding a spouse can become a massive idol. And we know what to do with every other idol. So if I'm constantly talking about cars, people are like, you're a bit obsessed with cars. Why are you constantly talking about cars? Or if I'm constantly talking about houses that I want to buy, people go, houses. But if I'm a single and I'm talking about, I really like this guy, or I wonder, could you pray for me in this? People are less perceptive for that. And it's just like, but after a while, you start to realize it's all this person talks about. That's probably not somebody who's content and finding joy. That's somebody that is desperately trying to find their next date. And I think it's when we bring that type of stuff out into growth group that we can talk about it and ask the question. And I think we have to be aware. Again, going back to online dating. Do I have a point online dating? No, if that's what you want to do. But for me, that it would just be like looking at idols all day and all night. It's just like, how am I? It'd be like, I'm a fat man and I'm just looking at a candy shop all the time. This is not going to help me I need to find boundaries and that I can play in. So I think you probably got to know yourself, know your own personality, and then work out, is this trusting God or am I striving and trying to figure this all out?
So I've got another question talking about standards. Particularly thinking about guys, and this person's asking, are my standards, especially spiritually speaking, for guys, too high?
What, a girl to a guy?
A girl to a guy.
Yeah.
Am I wanting too much?
You wanting Jesus?
Yeah.
You want to marry Jesus? Wonderful.
Jesus,
He's not available.
He's been taken, I've been told.
Yeah, he's been taken.
But maybe
Taken
I'm looking for the Apostle Paul.
Well, he didn't start off great.
He was rough around the edges a little bit.
Rough around the edges a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Good. What's the concern?
How would I know?
How would you know if your standards are too high?
Yeah.
I would say again, I would find a faithful friend who you love and respect and say, could I talk with you about what my standards are? Because maybe am I missing something?
Yeah.
I would do that. Secondarily, I would ask, if I was to meet this man and he hit standards, would he want to be with me, given the reality of who I really am?
Right, that's a great question.
So am I the person that he would want?
I want him to be super godly while I am just like, whatever,
Totally.
cussing. And
it's like sometimes you meet Christians and they're sort of barely Christians, and they're like, oh, I'd never go out with somebody unless they're a Christian. And you're like, I'm not sure a real Christian would find you attractive because you're not sure whether you're in or out. It's very confusing. So are you the type of person that this guy would want to actually date? I think is important too. But I think, honestly, again, you just want to be doing this in community. Find friends who you respect and love. That's what Titus 2 is all about. Find people that you can say, hey, listen, these are my standards. What do you think? It works for guys too. Sometimes you speak to guys, single guys, and you ask them what they're looking for, and you're like, okay. Okay. So you're looking for a supermodel that reminds you of Jesus, that has a law degree and owns a house. And you're a bum. Okay, so how is this going to work? So realistic.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
I think finding somebody who loves Jesus,
right,
loves the church, and going to love you.
Right.
You will be surprised who the Lord might open your eyes to when you think in those categories.
Right.
Rather than just find this elusive person.
Right.
That's often not even real.
Yeah, that's probably a good question then, to push back for that person is like, are you clear on what you're looking for? Like, have you written it down? Is it something that you have real clarity on? Well, I'm looking for this quality, spiritually speaking, and this quality and this quality, or is it just more this idea of someone that you have in your mind?
Yeah.
That possibly no one ever really.
Yeah, we had a guy in our old church that there was a couple in the church that actually served in youth together, youth leaders, and they were super close friends all the time. And you're like, why are these two not actually like dating and getting married? And it was all because he was like, I don't really find her attractive. I'm not really that interested. And eventually one of the pastors actually spoke to him and said, what exactly are you looking for? And he realized he had made an idol out of almost a supermodel, and that was what he wanted. And as soon as he put that idol to death, he started to find this girl really attractive.
Right.
And now they're married with 4 kids, and I think they've been married like 15 years. But you're like, it's funny, but that only came out when you start talking about it. Before that, she wasn't even on the cards, wasn't even thinking about it.
Right.
And you're like, what a shame.
Yeah, that is one of the sad things for guys. I think guys, we can walk into a room filled with godly ladies and write off 95% of them just because of looks. I think that's a real.
And we all think we're quite good.
And we think,
actually, we walk into a room and think they would probably choose me.
If you were turning around and have the ladies evaluating you on the same terms, you probably wouldn't.
No. If ladies thought the same way as we do, there would be thousands of millions of single men everywhere.
Absolutely, we wouldn't.
I would be single for a start.
Yeah.
You saw my photo when we got married. It is the grace of God.
That's it.
Unbelievable. If I can get married, anybody.
I blame the photographer. I must be a bad photographer.
People still talk about, did you find each other attractive? And I'm like, oh, yes, I did. And I look over at Emily, she's like, you were funny. And I realized then it wasn't all built on looks.
Praise the Lord.
Emma says I'm getting better as I get older, which is good.
Yeah.
So I'm saying you wait until I'm 65. It's going to be like looking at George Clooney. It's going to be unbelievable.
Matt Chandler has these 4 different qualities to look for. We've mentioned them before in the past, but I think they're really good. And his 4 qualities are character, first and foremost. Like, does this person have a known love for Christ?
Yeah.
And that is the first quality. Secondly, submission to authority. Does this person, how do they treat older people, for instance? Are they someone who's quick to listen to the input of other people, or are they dismissive? No one can really speak into their life. They're sort of a law unto themselves. If that's the kind of person, then that's probably, they're going to treat you in the same way. Suffering, how do they respond when someone slanders them or, gets stuck into them? Because that tends to reveal what's really inside for a person. Do they snap back and defend themselves, or, are they someone who, is humble in that? And then lastly, are they someone that has commitment? Have they shown commitment, or are they always looking for what's best next, moving on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? Mm-hmm. And because commitment is so central to what love means, someone who hasn't demonstrated commitment in the important things now, what makes you think they're going to be any different when it comes to a marriage, in hanging in there through sickness and in health, with you as well. So I think they're probably 4 good things to be thinking about. We had another question that's come in. It's kind of a 3-parter one, but I'm going to just deal with the first part. If marriage symbolizes the love of God with the church, how is a single life a better way of showing the world that love?
Yeah, you can answer that. That's
the Sam Albury.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful things was when a couple of years ago we went away to the single-minded conference. The whole pastoral team went, and a whole bunch of you guys. I know a lot of people in this Zoom meeting went along as well. It was a wonderful time. And one of the things that Sam Albury, who was a speaker, and he's a guy who's single, and he's about 50, I think. He's same-sex attracted and hasn't felt he's in a place to get married up until this point. And he said, if marriage symbolizes the shape of the gospel, like the way, a husband treats his wife points to Christ in the church, then singleness points to the sufficiency of the gospel.
Yes.
It points to how Christ is so supremely satisfying that it's even possible to not only survive in the single life, but to thrive because of how good Christ is. And the person who embraces the single life for the sake of Christ displays that, I think, powerfully so, that Jesus is enough. That's what Christ himself did. He lived a single life. He was never married because he was so fully satisfied through his relationship with his Father in heaven. And I think that's the beautiful way that the single life displays the love of God, how beautiful it is to know Christ in an intimate way.
It's so true. It really does. A single life that's being lived well. I mean, I think back to, like, we had these 2 old dear ladies in our old church, Hetty and Iwin. I mean, honestly, they've both gone to be with the Lord now, 2 sisters. They were in their 80s when we were there. They're in they died in their early 90s, never got married. But their passion for Jesus and obsession with Jesus was a living, walking testimony every day of their lives. And I think that they displayed the gospel all the time. Because what they screamed is what you just said. They screamed that Christ is enough. To live as Christ, to die is gain. And it was so attractive. You don't have to be married to display the gospel. You just have to fall in love with Jesus and have him be in your all. And I think it's a beautiful thing. It really
Absolutely.
is.
Well, guys, I'm just mindful of the time. It's 9:35, and we're going to stick around for a bit longer.
Paul's
if
tired.
anyone wants to,
Paul's tired.
Paul is jogging tomorrow, so
He's jogging.
So he knows he needs his sleep.
He's got to climb back in his cardboard box soon.
But if you want to stick around, we'll stick around for a little bit longer. Don't forget, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back with...
What's the show on?
the show.
What's the show?
It's going to be a great show. We've got a great guest panel lined up for you.
I might tune in.
We've got the Master. We've got Ollie Pierce. We've got Mr. Mustachio himself.
Oh, this is
the blonde Burgundy. He will be there. And we're
I might bring the flower.
Bring the plant. And then 4 weeks from now, we're going to be talking about gender and gender identity and manhood and womanhood specifically.
Excellent.
So with Riley and Maddie. Emma, can you close in prayer for us as we send everyone out?
Lord, I do thank you for tonight, Lord. I thank you for each person here, Father, and just their desire to love you well and to have you as Lord of their life in all areas, Lord, including relationships, Father. And Lord, I think, and what can be a difficult topic, Lord, I pray that people leave tonight not feeling discouraged or anything, Father, but Lord, feeling encouraged and feeling spurred on that you are the perfect matchmaker, Lord, that no one is just left on the shelf, but you have the perfect plan for everyone's life, whether it be marriage or whether that be singleness, Lord, but ultimately we all find our fulfillment in you. And Lord, I just pray that all of us would delight ourselves in you, Father. And Lord, I do pray for people that want to be married, Father, that you would gift them with that, Father.
Yes,
and you would bring a spouse their way, Father. But Lord, ultimately, would you help us all just to live for you in whatever you called us to?
Yes.
Amen.
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 Guys, thanks so much for coming and joining us.
Thank you.
Watching the show.
Watching the show.
Watching the show.
Hope you enjoyed the show. It was a great show.
It's going to be an after show in 5 minutes.
Now,
it's going to be good.
One thing I forgot to mention is there's a couple of books that really I've mentioned before, some of you might be familiar with. If you want to find out more about this, there's 2 books. One's called Sex, Dating and Relationships by Jay Thomas and Gerald Heistin. Wonderful short book. It's got a yellow cover. Sorry? Orangey yellow.
Is the color of the cover interesting? Is it an important part of the...
It's not
book?
really an important
okay,
part,
good.
but anyway.
Making sure.
Great little book. Really highly recommended from me. A second one is by the guy who wrote the article that you guys read, Marshall Segal.
What color is that?
It's called Not Yet Married. I'm not even sure what the color is. It's more like an awkward hand-holding picture situation.
Oh, dear.
And it's talking about more like the rich single life as well as dating and relationships. It's a little bit longer, a bit more in-depth. Wonderful book as well, filled with his personal testimonies and stuff. Last thing I wanted to say, guys, before I let you go is don't feel like, if you've got questions that maybe you didn't feel comfortable to ask tonight, maybe you didn't get a chance to, let's keep the conversation going. Keep talking to us. Keep talking to your group leaders. Don't feel like, just because your question didn't get asked tonight that it has to stop. Or maybe, we answered your question, we didn't really answer it fully. It was just a bad answer. You're feeling, somewhat irritated. Keep the conversation going. We'd love to chat more with you about it. So hope tonight bless you guys. And until we see you again sometime soon.
Thank you. Thank you for tonight.
You're welcome.
Guys, appreciate it.
Thanks.
The show must go on.
It's true.
The show must go on. What's Paul doing? I thought he'd be long gone. Look at
He's
him.
hanging around for the after show.
What's wrong with him?
Isn't it past your bedtime, Paul?
It is.
Sorry, they don't set bedtimes for me anymore because I'm old enough.
In the street? Out on the street?
You guys might all still be told when to go to bed, but I get to choose for myself.
It's one of the privileges of when you turn 40, Heather.
40?
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was 50.
40.
Yeah.
No, it's only 40.
It's just what happens when you're an adult. So when you guys catch up,
Yeah, that's right, Josh.
Why, Anna? Why are you on sort of a wavy cloud thing? What is this? What is this behind you? What is this?
It's my couch.
It's roughly.
It's
Can we see the whole
on
thing?
my couch.
The throne. Yeah.
The rug.
Oh, it's a throne. The wave is on the move. It's good.
I'm ready.
That's nice. It looks warm, actually.
Last week in Bible study, it was like this because it was on me, and everyone went, "Where's the wavy thing behind you?"
Yeah, you can't please everyone.
No. No, you can't. You can't please everybody. Where will it go? Tendai is he even there?
We never know. We never know.
He was
Silent
showing the
assassin.
truth before.
I reckon he just logs onto these things to make us think that he's attending, and he's off out. He's not even
Which
there.
breakout room was he with? Did he show?
Did he show in a breakout room?
Is
No.
I think there's a high probability right now we're talking about a bubble bath.
Bubble bath.
Laptop's up there, bubbles going.
That's a smart idea.
With all the sort of blankets everywhere and stuff, as an English guy, just a thought. Have you guys heard of like heating?
It's on.
Heating? It's on?
Turn it
Okay.
Cold burn.
What about like
Windows
everybody
90.
else? Clara, have you got heating? No heating.
Oh, that's hard.
We have heating.
You have heating, but you don't put it on.
Use them.
They turn it on, it'll heat up the whole
Yes.
downstairs.
Yeah.
Well, it's on. It's on at the moment.
I never realised that Australia was a third world country until winter. And then I realised these poor people, they put hats on, they put coats on, you're like, heating. You just press a little button, and it pops.
We just know what the sun is down here, so we're used to getting some sunshine for like most of the year. So
Yeah.
we just don't. We invest in air conditioning, but not so much heating.
Jen, have you got heating?
Yes, and it's nice and snug in this room. But my weighted blanket is my favorite thing in the world. I just like.
Okay.
Oh, I've heard about them. Yeah.
Do you have a
Do you
little
have a
electric
weighted
blanket as
one?
well? What about a little electric blanket? You got one of them?
No, but it's not about the heat. It's about
Oh, the weight.
the weight. It's
Because
that.
isn't it like oh, they're really cool, aren't they?
It's like
Yeah.
literally. Like that.
Okay.
That's why I'm single. Is because I already have a blanket that cuddles me. So I don't need
Okay.
Don't you get claustrophobic?
I don't think I'd like that. We have an electric blanket, but every now and again, I leave it on too high a setting. And I wake up about 2 a.m. and have to crawl onto the floor for breath because I'm like practically boiling over. So I've tried to stop turning it on now for my own safety. We just leave the heating on.
Oh. Very good for the environment.
No.
Blow the environment. I'm cold. I don't like getting cold. Paul, have you got heating?
Yeah, mate.
Is it on?
No, I don't need it on. I've got the window open, mate. Window right here.
That speaks of other challenges.
And this window's
Oh my
also open.
goodness.
So you got a blanket on, but your window's open.
Well, I'm in my bed, so that's why the
It's
blanket's
good
on.
Yeah.
I see.
Actually,
Okay.
Paul loves a window open. He does.
Heather looks very warm. Heather looks
I
fine.
have the fresh air,
My
mate.
window's open.
Oh, you're boiling over.
I hate heat.
Josh and Amy, have you got heating on? Because I'm paying for that. Could you turn it off?
Everyone else can turn it on.
No, don't turn it off.
Is the heating on?
Yeah.
It's money, you know.
Okay.
Okay. That's on here.
This place is boiling.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
It's warm, isn't it?
It's
It's lovely.
Charlotte.
I know that Josh Jones has not got the heating on.
No.
We have to be in the deep of winter.
It's true. Whenever your folks do
Yeah.
Zoom calls, they're always like, your
Beanies.
mum has got the hoodie pulled down so far.
Yeah, they
it's
do.
just like a
They're
little-
so dressed up. It's like
a ninja.
it's like looking at an English Christmas caroler at Christmas. It's like, what are you doing? Carol singing? You know, so they've got these hoodies on. And like, what are you doing? Little button, pop the heating on. Ooh,
That was
whoa.
back in February, wasn't it?
No, it's last week. Yeah, that's right, February. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, missed
Crazy.
it, didn't
It
you?
is winter tomorrow, so
Oh yeah, it's
June.
June.
Time still goes when
I thought we were already in
everyone's
winter.
isolation.
It's freezing.
I love this show.
Yes, this is a great show.
great
I thought it
We
was
need a
Young
song.
Adults, but show. I think it's awesome.
I think you need to borrow Jenny's lights for the show though. They
Yeah,
work
that's
well.
true.
true.
Yeah.
What's been your all favourite bits of Young Adults so far?
it
As
was,
the guy that's not involved.
it was just such a blessing right before COVID to have young adults on the value of community. Like
That's true.
humor in that
You
one.
all even sat together.
Like,
Yeah.
that was a nice night.
I remember when
Is that
Riley
Riley's place?
like what is the one thing that would make us question giving up Christian community for? His example was $1 million. But like, and I remember we all had like, oh, this would really tempt me to like give it up if I had to choose one or the other type thing. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, he was so right, community. Without you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. Crazy.
But anybody else? What's been your highlights of Young Adults so far? Nothing means
Okay.
no highlights.
Yeah.
The show isn't going to go on because it's lame.
I've been really enjoying the show.
Thanks, Josh Jones.
That's true,
Appreciate it,
Josh
mate.
Jones.
Virtual high five, bro.
I think probably the respect of elders. That's probably the number one highlight for young adults.
Love you, bro.
That's nice.
You're up there with my highlights.
He's up there. Look at him, Liverpool top. He's up there. They're pretty good, Liverpool. Fair dues. Tonight's been my highlight of Young Adults.
It's the only light, to be honest.
It's my only light.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they got
It's
the
my high
stars.
and my low.
I'm still waiting to listen to Glenn and Donnie's. I keep looking to see if it's on.
Yeah.
Glenn and Donnie's, no,
No, well, they said they felt like maybe.
they didn't want it on.
Oh,
So it's available if you want to listen to
oh
it.
yes.
okay.
We would like, yes.
So we could probably put out put it in the newsletter, or I don't know, contact
Yeah.
us if you want to listen
Oh.
to it.
Yeah, that'd be a
Contact
blog.
Consider
Or
yourself
put it on
contacted.
Put it on the Gospel Community Leaders thing,
Yeah.
the link up.
Yeah, that's a good
It's actually on the YouTube
I
channel.
feel bad now because Anna's gone from the wave cloud. It's gone. And now we've just got a sofa.
Oh, I feel Phil was just alluding to his usual position then when he turned to the side.
It's actually the other side. We normally get the other
Sorry,
side.
could
of
you
his face.
just keep turning other way?
No, he wants your left profile, mate, because we always.
Oh, that's better. That's better. That's better. This is how
Yeah.
when Phil normally is on Zoom at home, all you see is the side of his face.
The left side. On
The left side. It's really that's one of my highlights.
Yeah.
It's every time.
Where did Forrest Gump go?
Forrest.
Has he gone to do shrimp? Bubba shrimps.
Who was Forrest Gump?
Sebastian.
Oh, Seb.
Sebastian.
Oh, and he does say
He gets up really
Jenny.
early.
Jenny.
Jenny,
I miss him.
Johnny.
a lovely boy.
How was said Forrest Gump?
Hair.
I don't know. He just sort of had this hat on, this sort of bright little face. If you watch Forrest Gump and you watch him when he went off to be Bubba's shrimps, similar. I'll find a
Right,
picture.
I'm off to bed, guys. Thanks so much for tonight.
Good night.
Bye.
Yeah.
We might let these Taylors go as well because, Josh has got his 18-year-old house babysitting
they're
wings.
gonna party it up if they don't go home.
Yeah,
He
Amy.
knows what's going on back there.
Bye, guys. It's been fun hanging with you.
Bye, Taylors.
See you later.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
guys. See you all soon.